You may have heard me mention before that Pope Francis not too long ago asked all priests and deacons to preach only about 10 minutes or less. But today I also have to read a letter prepared by the Archbishop, and so I have to obey both of the Holy Father and the Archbishop, and I don't know if the letter counts as part of the 10 minutes or not, but I'll try to get within the limits. You know, I've heard that some priests or preachers feel like they have to start the homily with a joke just to kind of get people at ease and get them ready for something serious. And I don't know if that's really true or not. The readings today are so awesome, it seems like we could just enter into them directly. However, there was once a man in the big city, and he needed to get to the airport in a hurry, and so he hailed a taxi driver, "Taxi!" And he jumped into the taxi, "Take me to the airport as fast as possible." And so they were going along, and about halfway there, the passenger in the back tapped the taxi driver on the shoulder. And the taxi driver jumped up and slammed into the curb and stopped the taxi driver. And the man in the back said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I just wanted to make sure we're going on the fastest way to the airport." And the cab driver said, "It's not your fault. It's just today is actually my first day to drive a taxi. For 25 years, I drove a hearse for a funeral home. And no passenger ever tapped me on the shoulder in that time." Well, Isaiah has a moment that's kind of the opposite of that. Not seeing someone coming back from the dead who startled him, but he is in the presence of the vision of the God of life, whose life is like a fireball, and its total being, full action, all of life is contained in God, and he's there before God's majesty, and he sees a vision of it, and he falls down quaking in fear. And he says, "I am a man of unclean lips among a people of unclean lips." He expresses within the sight of that holiness how different he is from that holiness, and he knows it. Now, the altar servers do a lot during the Mass. I don't want to put any pressure on them like giving them a pop quiz. But if I was going to ask them, okay, in the first reading of Isaiah, did you hear any words that we repeat during the Mass, during the liturgy? In that reading of Isaiah, were there any words repeated that we hear every time? Actually, we usually sing them, don't we? What was it? The angels cried out, "Holy, holy, holy." Just like when we sing the Sanctus, or the Holy, Holy, Holy. That's where those words come from. Holy, holy, holy. And the word they're using in Hebrew, kadosh, which means holy or sanctified, what does it really mean? Well, it means the same thing as sanctus, but we don't usually think about it. Holy means something that is set aside. It is set apart or aside, and it's dedicated totally to the Lord. It's like a sacrifice. But in this case, it means other. They're saying that God is the other. He's totally different than anything that we can compare him to, that we can expect. He's the other. The triple repetition says that it's beyond words. You don't need to go to the fourth instance, because once you've said it 3 times, that means it goes on to infinity. Holy, holy, holy. Well, we talk about God, and Isaiah had to use some words to write down his vision. He was a priest. And so God appeared to him in a very priestly way. There's incense. There's the rumbling of kind of the choir. There's this priestly setting where God is up on a throne, and through the smoke of the incense and the haze and the mystery, he has a vision of God. And even there's a charcoal that comes from the altar, which is like the charcoal that would burn the incense. And so in that language, we get as close as we can get to maybe having a vision of what God is like. But it's other than that. We can't go past our human limits to get to what God really is. We only know that God is greater and higher and better, any word you can think of, other than we can say, totally holy. And in that majesty, Isaiah, he falls down and he says, I'm not worthy to be in your presence, Lord. But that's not where it stops. Nobody should dwell on their own sinfulness for too long. That would just be turning inwards more and more. It's not about us. It's about what God says. How does he respond? He sends his holy angel to purify him, to heal him. And once he does, he lifts him up and he says, who should I send? Who shall I send? He makes the offer. And Isaiah says, here I am, Lord, send me. So when God heals us, it doesn't just stop there. He has a mission for us. He has work for us to do. And that can be why it can be so scary sometimes to pray, to really say, God, I really want you to change my life. I want you to enter into my life personally. Because if we say that, then God might really do it. And he might say, aha, well, I have work for you to do. And we do. All of us have a mission to keep announcing the Holy Gospel to the world. Now, sometimes it's very obvious, like being a volunteer, being a priest or a deacon or a lector, or serving at the altar as a Eucharistic minister, the altar servers, in the choir. Those are kind of obvious roles, and it gives us, a defined role. But what's really challenging is that God doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just stop at the limits of our career or our vocation or our state of life. He calls us beyond that with all sorts of unexpected things. You can call them interruptions, inconveniences. It could be somebody visiting. It could be an illness, an unexpected thing that happens. How do we respond in that moment when we're really tested? That's when we have to rely on God's strength and go beyond ourselves. Well, that's exactly what happened to St. Peter and the fishermen. Now, Peter wasn't a priest. He was a fisherman. So God didn't appear to him in a kind of priestly way, but in a different way. They had been working all night. We've heard this gospel many times, so we know basically. But think about this. Peter was a fisherman. Simon was a fisherman. And he had an empty boat. He had failed as a fisherman that night. Well, that could be symbolic of his whole life. I failed. I failed as a fisherman. I failed in my life, in my studies. Some people feel like they fail all the time. They're not the perfect husband or wife or son or daughter. Or they wanted to be a great athlete or and they didn't. They got an injury and it all ended in one day. And then they say, well, look, it's like I went out fishing, now I have nothing. I'm no one. And that's exactly when God says, no, go back out. Go back out into that world of hope and of your dreams. Cast out the net again. Now that casting out the net is different for every person. You had an argument with your family. You feel bad. You want to do better. Go back out into that situation. Let them offer kindness and forgiveness to you, and you offer it to them. You didn't do so well in your career. Well, don't quit. Go back out. Go back into the office. It's not going to be easy, but I'm with you. We have those missions in life, and then the greater mission of spreading the good news, of being an instrument of mercy in the world. We never have enough. We never have enough talents or time or gifts to do this. And so we could go to the end of the day and say, you know what? I'm an absolute failure. I give up. I quit. No. That's what the devil wants us to do. He wants to trick us. He says at the end of the night, look, you only did about 85%. You're a total failure. Oh, really? Well, what about the other 85% that somebody actually accomplished that was good? That's when we have to turn it over to God and say, yes, I know I couldn't do it perfectly. oh, Holy Spirit, please accept the little bit I've done, bless it, you complete it in your own way, and you put your trust into God and you go to bed in peace. That takes humility too, and acknowledging that it's really God who's the source of all those gifts. So to summarize, we do have the reality that God is holy, 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 the totally other. And in that greatness, we see our sinfulness, we see our smallness, but that's not where it ends, because God heals us. He picks us up and he says, I have a mission for you. Go forward. I am with you. And all we have to do is say, yes, I am here, Lord, send me.